If there was a nuclear apocalypse and you had to live in a vault underground or maybe a silo, what do you think your job would be?
Communications?
Welcome to Context Club, a weekly podcast where Mike Williams and myself dig through all the clues, context, and continuity that you need to enjoy your favorite shows, video games, and movies, and comic books to the absolute max. We're flipping over all the different quotes from creators and looking into the implications of different lore elements and these different things. And this week, I'm really excited to be talking about Silo. Also, what's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How you doing this week? You had a nice week off. How you feel?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty good. Got some fresh mountain air the other week there, and then coming back talking about like one of my favorite, I think, underrated shows. And the reason for that is because the much more like probably to be celebrated and much more bombastic kind of thing that's happening in our world is that the Fallout show is about to premiere this at the end of this week, right? We're getting the Fallout TV series. It's a major video game franchise, right? With lots of sequels. Like it started off with those two simple PC games, well, not simple, but top-down PC games, right? And then we got the big Fallout 3 kind of resurgence, and that really just took off with spin-offs in that kind of perspective and world. And we got Fallout 4. We've got a multiplayer Fallout game, right? It's Fallout everything. Everybody, I think, like widely, Pip-Boy, the imagery of a Pip-Boy is pretty known, or like the Pip-Boy himself as a character is known across the landscape of video games and gamers, right? But maybe not
Yeah,
so
I'd
much
say yeah.
with like the TV watching audience, a more mainstream audience, right? So they're about to experience the world of Fallout for kind of the first time, and that in itself is really exciting.
Yeah, and it'll probably hammer home the transition. We had the era of the superhero film, and I don't think that's going away. But the era of the video game adaptation in full swing.
Mm,
Um,
right.
if Fallout does well, because we had the Last of Us, which did gangbusters, won a number of awards for certain people, and now we have Fallout, which is coming. Will Fallout be in that same artistic vein? Probably not. But even on the smaller side, Twisted Metal got a second season at Peacock.
That's crazy to me. If you told me even when I was like 10 or 11 or 12, like, hey, there's going to be a Twisted Metal show, I would say you're out of your goddamn mind. Like, there's no way they're making a show about like a car battler where there's a crazy clown whose hair is fire and he drives an ice cream truck that shoots rockets. Like, that's never going to happen. So that they
And
made
yet
a
it
show and it
did.
got a second season is just, I haven't watched it. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's good, but just in concept alone, it's kind of wild. All right, so I'm gonna pull up this Fallout trailer, and I kind of, if you don't mind, Mike, could we kind of just talk about maybe some of the cultural relevance of Fallout, as a series, maybe as a franchise itself, and then kind of set up what this show actually means. Like you're saying about, like we're getting a lot of these video game adaptations, but like what about Fallout? Do you think is special, and do you think this show has a potential to like really like blow the doors off, like, get people really excited?
I honestly don't know how Fallout got this big. It has to just be Bethesda, because like Fallout was good and great in Fallout 1 and 2, but it wasn't a Diablo or anything like that. Like this is the game that everyone knew about. And then Fallout 3 happened, and it helps probably that, you have the Oblivion. I don't even think Bethesda really like hit the world until Oblivion came to consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And then like that was the moment that like Bethesda in sort of a general pop culture sense rose up.
Yeah, that's like
And
a kind of Western RPG, right? Fantasy base. It doesn't look anything like Fallout, right? but the
Yeah,
pedigree was good.
and that was the same thing with BioWare. Like BioWare was good and doing great work, but the real rise up for them was Knights of the Old Republic on consoles. Like that was, oh, now we're BioWare, like the BioWare that everybody knows. And I'd say Bethesda got that with Oblivion, and then you follow that with Fallout, and now Fallout is a thing that a lot of the gaming industry knows in a general sense. And this is a chance to sort of bring that weird post-apocalyptic and 50s aesthetic to the general audience who hasn't really seen a ton of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the strength of this. Like it's not a particularly they're not particularly unique stories, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But and this one is telling its own original tale with its own original vault. So like the hook is the aesthetic and the fact that, you know, a lot of the general audience just hasn't seen anything like this.
Yeah, it's kind of wild too when you think about it. Like you said, like some of the stories aren't even original. Like some of it is just like old atomic media kind of ripped from like the 50s and 60s. Like anything that had to do with like anything in comics or films that had to do with atomic bombs, essentially, when there was, you know, a period in history when people were really focused on like nuclear energy and nuclear weapons and that sort of thing. There's a lot of science fiction that gets written around that stuff. And that stuff is just kind of pulled whole cloth into side quests in Fallout 3, I feel like. But the other thing I think that's special about Fallout 2 is the kind of like there's a weird macabreness to it, right? It's like you're playing in this game that's an apocalyptic world, but there's also a humor to it, at least in those first two games, and I think that carries over to the third one. Like your pet dog, his name is Dog Meat, and there's, you know, radioactive mutants who still kind of live in the world, and they're like I don't know. It's interesting that they can speak, actually, right? They're not like these faceless zombies that try and attack you. There are some of that going on, but there's rhetoric here. There's discourse, right? There's
a lot of black comedy to it, and not just the black comedy, but also the delineation between the 50s aesthetic and sort of the 50s joie de vivre and style of upbeat and positive and the future and everything is great. And if you just get this fridge, your family will have, you know, exactly 2 kids and they'll go to school and everything will be great and you'll have your white picket fence.
Yeah.
And that directly contrasts with the post-apocalypse. You're constantly getting that back and forth between them. So
right.
and that feeds into the black comedy a lot.
That's a really good setup. And I think that's about where I want to go up to for today. Because, well, like I said at the top, we're going to talk about Silo today. And I'm going to tell you a story about why I got into Silo. And it was because my wife had gotten back into the Fallout Shelter game, right? Which has a very, they have similar premises and we'll get into it. But basically the premise of Fallout is that there's this company that's built vaults all over, you know, the United States, maybe elsewhere, where people could survive a nuclear apocalypse, because that was like a big fear during that time, right? And the nuclear apocalypse happens, and then people survive in these vaults, and then eventually most starts of many Fallout games are kind of the first 10 minutes, you're stepping out of this vault into the open world, and then kind of going on a quest from there. And sometimes, you know, you need to do something to like help the vault out, or maybe there's some kind of mystery that you need to solve, but it's generally about this adventurer stepping out into this nuclear wasteland for the first time. And Fallout Shelter is a mobile game where you kind of don't do that. Instead, you kind of focus on managing. It's like a sim situation where you're kind of managing the dwellers in the vault and kind of, you know, building up a base that way, or you're building down a base technically into the ground. So my wife was like kind of getting back into that for some reason. And then I was like, oh yeah, that Fallout show is supposed to come out. And I was like, man, I can't wait for that. And then I was on Apple TV Plus and just scrolling by, and I saw I saw the trailer for Silo, or not necessarily even the trailer. Like I barely glimpsed it, and then I just kind of saw the description, and it looked like a really samey type of world. I'm like, what are they doing here? Is this just a ripoff of Fallout? But also, I'm interested. Like, I can't wait another. At the time was like a year and change for this Fallout show to come out. So let's just check this out and see how it goes. And instantly, dude, I was hooked. I watched the full season like in a single night. I think it's 10 episodes. Maybe it was 2 nights, but it was a whirlwind. Because once I started watching this show called Silo on Apple TV Plus, with a lot of the same trappings and hooks, maybe not so much the satire, the irony. There's satire in there, but not so much the kind of humor elements of a Fallout show. But the very concept of like giant hole in the ground, people got to go there to survive, and Silo is a lot more concerned with like what happens to them. And I like this show so much. I actually wrote a script for a VOD I was going to publish on my YouTube channel about how there's no possible way that a Fallout show could be as good as Silo is. And Silo, and we're going to get into this later, is based on a series of books written by Hugh Howey, and but he got it adapted into a show. So I started doing a lot of research for this script, and we're going to do something that we've never done on the show before. I'm going to read you that script. It's kind of unedited. The way I'm not a great writer, but on YouTube, like I've published videos, a lot of videos, scripted videos before. And what happens with those is generally if I make a mistake or something, either in the edit or in real time, I can fix a mistake, right? We're not going to get that luxury today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read this script for you, Mike, and for our audience, just kind of where my head was at the time. Again, just kind of framing it. And this is before I saw that Fallout trailer that we were kind of just watching there. So I'm gonna just leave this image up.
You guys are gonna get the full raw dog of a YouTube script.
Exactly. Yeah.
Minus the editing and with another person listening as well.
Yeah, this is gonna be real fun and awkward but awesome at the same time. I am excited to do it though for you. So I'm gonna pull this up. Maybe I'll throw in my script voice here, my YouTube voice. Maybe we'll just go through it kind of casually. And Mike, feel free to stop me at any point or laugh or joke or point out typos or something. But here we go. So the title of this video is called Silo Sets the Bar Very High for Amazon's Fallout series. And I did adapt this first paragraph, but after that, it's going to be, I don't know what's in here. I don't really remember too much. I know it's a finished script. All right. Silo sets the bar very high for Amazon's Fallout series. Bethesda and Amazon's Fallout television series will air this week on April 10th, actually. It's a very exciting production for video game enthusiasts like myself, and for you, Mike, who will now get to share the world of Fallout with friends and family who have never touched a controller or a mouse and keyboard, or I guess at this point, if you play Fallout Shelter, an iPad or an iPhone. However, the bar has already been set almost impossibly high for the show. Not just because the Fallout series is the adaptation of a long video game franchise, but also because Silo, an incredible show with an extremely similar setting, already aired earlier last year. You should watch Silo, no caveats. It's a fantastic work of fiction with great suspense, fascinating world building, dynamic characters, multiple levels of mystery, and of course, a very good twist or two. And I just rewatched the last 3 episodes like last night. I'd say there's like a twist or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
As a twist to this, I will say that I can read along with Evan's script, and he has already changed from what he's just freewheeling already.
I can't do it.
Just so you know, go ahead.
It's habit. Yeah,
keep going.
I can't stop myself. I'm sorry. That's my full-hearted endorsement. Stop reading this or listening to this or watching this right now and go watch Silo, or else suffer some minor spoilers about the plot and setting. If you have never heard of it, Silo is a television series produced by Apple, which features a post-apocalyptic world where humans are forced to live underground in a giant silo, which provides shelter from a fatal nuclear wasteland above. If you are familiar with Bethesda's Fallout series, then this all may seem a bit too similar to the game's vaults. Here's where I would have an edit. This is the actual sentence. If you are familiar with Bethesda's Fallout series, then this all may seem a bit similar to the game's vaults. Maybe even too similar. You see, that's a hook right there, Mike. That's like, hey, we're gonna talk about a conflict here. Keep watching this video. After doing some digging, it's clear that Fallout did inspire Silo, but maybe not exactly in the way that you'd think. While the Fallout series is incredibly popular, And okay, let's just take a second here, Mike. If you describe the aesthetic of Silo, the people in the world, the clothes they're wearing, and the kind of technology that they have, would you say that it looks Fallout-ish? Does it look like kind of a knockoff? Would you describe it, or
No. So it, the black comedy is part of the thing that really marks the difference. Like, for one, the vaults in Fallout are, you got the familiar blue and yellow uniforms that everybody wears. Um, you have sort of that 50s technology. You have the vault program issues themselves, and that within Fallout's lore, each vault is a specific experiment on the
oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
denizens of the vault. Like, they are, like, each vault has said, like, hey, what if we do a social experiment
right.
on 200 or so people, and every vault has a different social experiment, usually with the exception of whatever vault the main character comes from, which is usually the normal vaults.
Yeah.
Whereas Silo plays it entirely straight, in that the silo itself is a giant tube where everyone lives. It's got lights that simulate daytime, farm. It's got different levels. It's got its own government. Like, it is mostly played entirely, in Silos, played entirely straight, that humanity lives underground because something happened to the surface world, and they can see the surface world on sensors, which is actually a pretty key part of the main plot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's a good distinction. Like, in Fallout, we know that people go outside, there's radiated monsters and stuff. In Silo, we're mostly focused on a singular silo, right? And I think some of the similarities that I would say is like the kind of, and this is, something easy to draw upon, but like the computer technology, right? You look like you're operating like on like an old DOS system where you're going to get green text and you're typing in prompts and things to use computers in this world.
On CRTs, a lot of physical technology, like switches and stuff like that.
Yeah, not a lot of wireless stuff. It's a lot, everything's wired and that sort of thing. It's like a lot of machining and stuff like that. So those are kind of similar, but for me, when I saw this at first, I was feeling like this is like pretty similar to Fallout, the idea of these vaults existing. And I think in Fallout 2, there's a lot more kind of emphasis on the corporate nature of the vaults, right? In Silo, we don't really know who made the silo even, right? And then that's kind of getting into spoiler territory. I'll save that for later in the episode if people want to finish listening to this. There's no spoilers in it until we get to the end of this, and then Mike and I are going to talk about the source material for Silo. But let's continue with the script. I said, here's what I wrote. While the Fallout series is incredibly popular and video games are providing a ton of inspiration for Hollywood lately, the interactive medium is also getting old, and therefore games have been permeating pop culture in more subtle ways. Straight up, Silo is based off of a book series written by Hugh Howey, who did indeed play the original 2 Fallout games when he was younger. However, ironically, back in 2013, in an interview with Wired.com's The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy podcast, Howey said, "When I was in talks with one TV production company, they were like, 'Are you a fan of the Fallout games?' And I thought, oh god, yeah. I'm surprised I didn't call it the Vault instead of the Silo." Howey acknowledged the similarities are glaring in hindsight, as well as the growing popularity of Fallout as a franchise back in 2013. That's around the time that I think Fallout 3 would have come out in like 2011 or something like that. But he also added, "I didn't get into the first-person shooter variety that have come out more recently." That's what he said in 2013. Fallout 3 came out in 2000. Oh, sorry. I got it. I covered my bases here. Fallout 3 came out in 2008, and the beloved Fallout New Vegas dropped in 2010. But Howey explains during the Wired podcast interview that a majority of inspiration for Wool, the first short story in the Silo series, released in 2011. It came from his experiences settling down after being a yacht captain for some time. Any notes so far, Mike?
I did not know about the yacht captain thing.
Yeah, man.
Like, I'd heard about the other stuff, but like, wow,
I'm digging
that's
here.
wild.
After traveling and experiencing the world firsthand, and this is what we're going to go into, is talking about how Maybe I'll just read because I probably covered it here in the script. After traveling and experiencing the world firsthand, Howie felt it was unsettling to live in one place and be forced to rely on TV, the internet, and newspapers to know what the world was like. This is kind of familiar. The writer elaborated, it was terrifying to see how different the picture was painted because of the filters. In Silo, there is a single camera feed that shows the underground inhabitants just how incredibly dangerous it is outside at all times. As Howie explains, his post-apocalyptic story is initially centered around how that single screen shapes the worldviews and perspectives of his characters. As an anchor point, that's quite a bit different from the Fallout games, which generally use vaults as a quick starting point or tutorial section. In the first 30 minutes to an hour of a Fallout game, the player usually needs to escape a vault or perhaps save it somehow by venturing out into the nuclear wastes to bring back some crucial plot device. Actually, the premise of people living in giant underground shelters to survive the nuclear apocalypse above them is probably what Silo and Fallout share the most. From there, things get pretty different pretty fast. Silo is mostly concerned with questions about human nature, curiosity, and socio-political dynamics. To be fair, there's a good bit of that in the Fallout games as well, but it's a lot different. Usually the fun in Fallout... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll say that the for Silo, it's concerned about the humanity and civilization within the silo itself. Even the Fallouts where the vault stays alive, like the first Fallout game, I want to say it's the one where they're looking for the water chip.
Or like a battery or something. Yeah, the water chip or something like that. Yeah, a filter
so the vault dweller, the main character, leaves their vault, which is fine, to go find... I believe the first game is the water chip and the second game is something else, but the water chip is there to create clean, fresh water for the vault. And that's why they go out into the world. And the game is sort of about that contrast between that general safety that you have and how the outside world actually is. Whereas this Silo sort of inverts it. In that outside is supposed to be completely unsafe and inside is all you have.
Right.
And then sort of dealing with, is that true or not?
Yes, nobody goes outside, really. We'll get into this, I think, in a little bit. Or we can talk about it once I get through the script, because I think I wanted to leave this, for the most part, kind of spoiler-free, because I think I was trying to encourage people to engage with Silo before the Fallout show came out. But let's jump back into the script, and I think I might touch on some of that, and then we can circle back. Usually, the fun in Fallout games comes from actively exploring a large open world in a post-apocalyptic retro future filled with irradiated monsters and old-timey robots wandering the ruins of a once utopian 1950s America. There's also tons of fun to be had by pushing up against a series of interlocking systems and mechanics as you explore, or trying to spec a character that can defeat every enemy encounter with just their fists. This is kind of trademark Bethesda, I guess at this point, kind of is known for doing that sort of thing. You could do that sort of thing in Skyrim and Oblivion, I think, just depending on how much time you want to spend into it. Or seeing how many potatoes with real-world physics you can load in before the game crashes your computer. Well, that's a Starfield reference, but you get the picture. That type of experimentation experience scratches a particular human itch and fuels player curiosity for hundreds of hours, but they are pretty much impossible to translate to the small screen. But, Fallout isn't necessarily without its own narrative trappings and aesthetics that could play well to the strengths of a television series. And again, I'm just going to say, I had not seen that dope-ass Fallout trailer yet. In my mind, I didn't think they were going to go all in on the aesthetic of Fallout or like the kind of out there nature of it. But this is where I was writing this script.
And it helps. I think it feels like they have sort of a through line in the trailers. You see the wonderful Walter Goggins playing. He's clearly the super mutant, and there's also scenes showing him as sort of a salesman for Vault Tech. So it seems to be that he is going to show sort of the before and after of humanity, in that he will have been a salesman for the Vaults and Vault Tech. And then there's also a shot of him running with a child as explosions happened in the background. So he will be firsthand seeing how things happened. And then you see him as I believe the term is ghoul.
Yes.
later on.
Like
with
a ghoul sheriff too, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And we don't know if those are both the same character, but they are both played by Walter Goggins, so
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, that is a very good distinction there, and like more reason there. Here's Walter Goggins here. You can see him in kind of the grown up version. So really, oh, you're muted still, Mike. Sorry, buddy.
They even said in the trailer there his character, I guess, is just called the Ghoul.
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. So I wonder how many ghouls we're gonna see, and if we're gonna get the other version of the ghouls that you kind of just lay waste to in the games, like by the dozens, right? Okay.
I mean, yeah, hopefully more ghouls, maybe some super mutants. I have to assume, as with any adaptation, you play the greatest hits during the first season.
All right, let's see how well I predicted it here in the script. Let's see, where did we go? Translate to the small screen. Did I talk about the narrative trappings? But Fallout isn't without narrative trappings and aesthetics that could play well to the strengths of a television series. So, it's not all lost. Again, I was thinking there's no way they could pull this off and make it look as cool as it does in the games, but I clearly have been proven wrong already. When the show airs in April, we're sure to see Vault Tech propaganda, intriguing retrofuturistic technology, and various factions vying for power in the wasteland. Of course, there are also killer robots, super mutants, like you brought up, Mike, rad scorpions, and the nefarious death claws. Watch out for those. I'm really crossing my fingers for a bombastic or fantastic Brotherhood of Steel or power armor reveal. We've already seen them. Man.
Yeah, not only have we already seen them, of the three main characters that we can see, there is the Vault Dweller, I don't know what her name is, Walter Goggins the Ghoul, and there is a Brotherhood of Steel recruit. You actually see him in power armor, and I believe his name is Maximus. So the Brotherhood of Steel are going to be a very big part of this story in some fashion, at least. Perhaps maybe seeing Maximus move away from zealotry, because while the power armor is fantastic and great, I'm sure they don't want to keep the actor in that suit or have to have the power armor on screen at all times for budget purposes.
Yeah, and there is also, I've seen a scene where there's like 8 or 9 Brotherhoods of Steel together. Here's the power armor, if you're confused, where they kind of like, there's like a bunch of them standing behind, I want to say Lucy, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure her name either. I forget. This is the Silo episode, not the Fallout episode. We'll talk about it next week, right? Here's a good Brotherhood of Steel right there. So yeah, like there's like 8 or 9 of these armors and the main protagonist kind of leading a charge of some sort. So like, yeah, we're getting a ton of this. Like this is way more production than I thought we were going to get for this. And yeah, it's exciting at the very least. So there's obviously a lot for Hollywood types to play with. But that honestly was part of my fears at the time for the Fallout show. Those fantastical sci-fi elements that make Fallout great are very cool and fun, but also can be distractions from what inherently is needed to execute on a good story. Character development, basically, is what I'm alluding to. Good storytelling is where Silo excels. It quickly sets up fatal stakes for the world and engages the audience with a ton of questions about why and how things are the way they are. We join the characters living in the silo as they pull on those threads, and where it goes from there is absolutely thrilling, and I mean that sincerely. It's probably safe to bet that the Fallout show will rush out into the wastes within the first episode or so. Meanwhile, Silo is much more focused on how a massive vault-type bunker would actually function, and as the show progresses, we learn a ton through its characters about the types of people who live in the silo, what they believe in, and what they have to do to survive. I haven't read the books. Mike, you have, but I haven't. But even so, I think Silo really manages to stand on its own as a comprehensive show in a pretty big way. I actually really want to read the books now, and I'm a terrible reader. The only what is this word? I don't know this word. The only passive media that ever did that, passive media in terms of like a television show or a movie that ever did that for me was the first season of Game of Thrones, and The Golden Compass might have been another. The hope for
I admit that. So like generally, I will skip through an adaptation if I've read the previous thing. So like Game of Thrones, I didn't watch most of the show except for the moments that I was like, oh, I want to see this scene.
How they did it.
like, yeah, and like show me how you did in live action or in manga adaptations like Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, I don't particularly watch the anime
Yeah.
because I stay up to date on the manga, and then I like will hop and be like, oh, this fight just happened. I want to see that animated.
Mm.
So stuff like that. So like that is generally my take on adaptations, which is also why like when people are more like, oh, I hate that that adaptation did this. Like, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like the original is still there.
Yeah,
Like
you can
it's
always go
fine.
back to the thing that already exists. I'm saying this all the time in comments and stuff. People just out there mad about whatever. Yeah. But what is it? So you brought that up, but do you think Silo is that for you? Did you just kind of go back to look at like the last two episodes or something, or were you hooked in, or?
Uh, I like some of the changes, so we'll talk about
Okay.
how it's changed, but for drama purposes, they've decided to obfuscate more of stuff in the show.
Okay, okay. So let's see. Where was I? I haven't read the books. I said that. Game of Thrones, Golden Compass. Yeah, this was just, if you couldn't tell, I really like this show. And, we'll talk about how faithful it is to the source material and stuff like that. But it is really good. You should watch it if you haven't seen it. The hope for Bethesda probably is that the Fallout show does exactly that. Get people interested in the source material who will then go out and then buy their games. Video game adaptations are better than they have ever been. See Arcane, The Witcher, and The Last of Us. So there's a lot of hope that Amazon could get it right. But Fallout and Bethesda games in general, while packed with great writing, aren't primarily known for traditional storytelling, which lends itself well to TV and movie adaptations. Like I said before, they kind of just ripped whole cloth other movies and stuff and put them in as side quests into Fallout games in the past. And I think some of that writing did get better. Was that a fair take? Like, did I get that right? Or do you think that writing in Fallout games is good?
I mean,
I think it's
I'm
good
I'm
games writing, but I don't know if it's good
one
storytelling.
and two are good stories. New Vegas is a good story, um, as in the smaller bits, not necessarily the overarching story.
Hmm.
But I would say I'm on record as not being a Fallout 3 and 4 liker. So
Oh no.
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean, I played 70 hours or something of both of those games and didn't finish them. So, I mean,
But there's always a room for like I feel the 3 and 4 sort of hit more on the action RPG, like collect all the loot, get more loot, go to place, loot, feel, and they do so in a interestingly mechanical way that a number of other games. So I understand why people like 3 and 4. That's just not
yeah,
my jam. Um, but I mean, part of the magic of it is being able to have a sort of an open canvas to play with. Like
okay,
every time you do a new Fallout game, you can just like you start at the vault. The vault dweller doesn't know jack about the world,
hmm
and let's go out. And that's why even like Fallout 76, which didn't start out all that well, still has its fans that play it to
sure,
this day.
yeah, sure, yeah. Like those mechanics really do it for some people, maybe even more so than they did in Starfield, right? Like Bethesda made a new game about space with similar mechanics to Fallout. But at some point, we've talked about this in the past too. We're trying to pull in people who are heavily invested into a series or a game can be hard if that world is well enough realized. All right, so I'm like 2 through 4 sentences left here. It looks like. So each Fallout game has a centralized protagonist with a narrative and goal to achieve, but that's not really the highlight of those games, like you kind of just pointed out, Mike. And none of those characters are quite as memorable as Joel from The Last of Us or Geralt from The Witcher. That's by design, I think, of course, to allow players to embody their own visions of the game's hero. But that means the Fallout show writers have a lot of gaps to fill in. They have to write that kind of everyman character in, and they've really got to sell it. In this case, I forget the actress's name, obviously very famous, but I'm terrible with names. If you've been listening to the other episodes, you know this. Maybe that's always been the struggle for a lot of video game adaptations to kind of fill in these gaps, but it's going to be more noticeable as these shows with similar concepts eventually go head to head. Now, both shows can obviously coexist regardless of how good each is. In fact, the best scenario is for us as viewers is that both of these shows are excellent. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing of the Fallout trailer. This is the end of my script here. That probably would have got reworked into a stronger conclusion. But like, that's pretty much my rundown and my recommendation to go and watch Silo and get excited for this Fallout show because the trailer actually looks like it's about to deliver on a lot of these
Yeah,
promises.
and it will help to let people know that this is from the Westworld people. So at the very least, it'll start good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, will it end good? Who knows?
Sure.
But intriguing story, and it looks like the characters are fun, and it looks like they did nail some of that black comedy and humor and whatnot.
Yeah, and we've got like the fish out of water story basically still happening, right? We're getting a character to kind of like fill in that place where she kind of confronts the sheriff and is like, "What's going on here?" She's trying to like make things fair, but she doesn't really know how the world works and that sort of stuff. And like I'm really excited to see we're getting tons in these trailers, tons of shots of the vault and vault life. Like in my script when I was writing this, I didn't think we would get any of that. I thought we'd get like 10, 15 minutes of that, and the rest of it's going to be like open deserts, easy places to produce content in. Like there's not a lot of people, and you're kind of gonna have these desolate areas. But like the set dressing here and the costume work and all of that, at the very least, this is going to be a fun show to watch visually, I think. But that said, do you want to kind of jump into the meat of this episode, which is kind of talking about Silo, I guess?
Yeah, yeah. So for the background, you mentioned Hugh Howey. Silo was originally there's always, when there's a new platform, a new medium, someone that catches on and really gets the heat. And Hugh Howey was one of those when Amazon opened up its Kindle Direct Publishing, and he started publishing what at the time was called Wool, and he published that, I want to say, over 6 parts, maybe, over time, and it kept getting more and more popular as he posted the parts, and then the next phase of the story was called Shift, as you can see there, and then the last phase of the story was Dust. And he has published all of those online. They are still available on Amazon Kindle, and he still has the rights to publish that stuff online. But you can find actual books of them now, as you can see there. And Silo, the series, the Silo trilogy is what the whole thing became known as. Silo, the series, is mostly the first book, Wool,
Mm-hmm.
though the series itself ends at about 3/4 of the way through Wool. And then, without spoiling anything, Shift is a completely different story in the same world that sort of explains how you got to the point of Wool with a different series of characters. And then Dust sort of brings the characters from Wool and the characters from Shift together to sort of finish off that story.
Yeah. So at this point, I will say, like, if you're still hanging on, you're still watching, we're probably going to get into spoilers now about some of these differences here. So, like, this is a part where you could probably pull the ripcord, go watch these shows, and then come back and listen to us kind of get into the nitty gritty here and break down into this stuff. Mike, can you talk to this a little bit? When I was researching the source material for that script, it sounded like Wool was like these tiny stories that were kind of like as Howie was kind of releasing stories at first on Amazon, he was like doing like little vignettes of science fiction writing and then publishing, it sounded like, and then people started to really like them, and then he's like, oh, I should like put these into a book, and then I think he kind of like strung them together a little bit better. It seemed like there was a big shift between like when he went from the first book to the second and third where they're more kind of structurally sound. Is that still ring true, or is that not completely accurate?
I would say yes. So, like I said, Wool was in like 6 parts over, I want to say, 2 years.
Okay, yeah.
And then Shift was in 3 parts, and Dust was just one whole story.
Interesting.
So, like Wool is definitely let's put some feelers out there. Let's see if it was interesting. It was just a short story, like at the very beginning. And then he sort of built on it with sort of novella-length editions or sequels. So Wool was sort of built over time as one story. And then Shift is 3, and it's pretty like straightforward, like 1, 2, 3, 3-act structure. You know what you're working with. And then Dust just is an entire book and finishes off the story entirely.
Do you want to dig into some of the spoilery stuff? Some of the differences? Like what, maybe like a good framing is like, what are the major differences between the books and the show? And then maybe we can talk a little bit about like what the work in general is kind of trying to say, and if that's executed well, you know.
Like if you have seen the first episode of the show does a lot of fleshing out and flashbacks to stuff that was mentioned in the books but wasn't in the books. So to not go too deep into spoilers, the first episode of the show ends with the sheriff, played by David Oyelowo. Hopefully I didn't spell his name. I forget. I think the character's name is Holston. Going out to clean the silos sensors, which is a thing. Basically, the silo itself has one major screen, a set of sensors that looks out into the world above. And this is their window into what's actually happening. And as far as they're concerned within the plot of the show, there was a rebellion long ago, there was a war, and the surface world was destroyed, and everyone had to move to the silo to survive. And anyone who wants to leave, they can leave. They are given the option. They put them in a suit, they send them to the surface, and all they really ask is that they clean off the sensors that show the outside world.
Yeah, it's basically a camera. In the show, they call it a sensor, but yeah, it's basically like a video feed, a webcam almost quality of feed that gets cluttered with atomic, apparently, allegedly atomic dust and stuff like that, right? And
right, and most of the people die pretty soon after that happens
because the world outside is so deadly, right?
Correct. And so the first episode of the show, like the inciting incident of the book, is the sheriff deciding to go out and clean the sensors and see what's out there because his wife did the same thing 3 years ago. And the show sort of adds background and characterization and sort of ties certain characters together in ways they were not tied together in the book.
Oh, wow.
Like the sheriff and Juliet didn't really meet all that much in the book.
I think in the show they actually meet only one time.
They meet one time, yes, over sort of a case.
Yeah, and it's an extended period of time, I'll say. Like they're like chatting a lot, and then they go on an adventure, sort of, and
right. And so like in the show, like some of the changes are like relics are a thing that they worry about. Like you can't have any relics of the past. Mm-hmm. That's not really as much of a thing in the books.
Interesting.
And so the thing with the sheriff's wife and George, who is the hardware IT guy who finds a relic of the past in the form of a hard drive.
And it sends him on a path, right? He now needs to pull the thread and figure out the truth of everything, essentially.
And George had a relationship with Juliet, who is the main character, played by Rebecca Ferguson. And all of that sort of fleshes out those characters and sort of ties them together a little bit better. Whereas in the book, the sheriff just goes out And then Juliet is from the mining section of the silo, the deep downs, and she is the next candidate for sheriff.
Yes.
So,
as selected by the sheriff. Yeah.
Well, in the show, she's selected by the sheriff. In the book, she's just the next candidate for sheriff. Like
like a lottery or?
Yeah, or something like that.
Huh.
So, like, it is not like the show sort of weaves them together for a quick case to sort of tie the line between them and sort of make it a calling that he in death is passing to her, that she needs to continue on. In the book, she's just the next candidate, and yes, there are some things that she learns from his stuff, but they don't like have as strong a connection. Neither does she have a stronger connection to George. Like, if I remember correctly, in the books, George is another miner from deep down.
Oh.
And he dies because of a completely different thing. So, like, in the book, he wants to drill a mine shaft vertically from the bottom of the silo. And that is sort of a threat to the orthodoxy, and that's why he dies in the book. Whereas in this, he finds the relic, which is a hard drive, and one of the things you see is a schematic diagram of the silo, and it actually shows the tunnel, and he asks, he's like, where's that? Yeah. Where does that go?
Sure, right.
And that's sort of the connecting idea to something that happens later in the books.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of stuff where they're just like, in the books, things just happen. And of course, things happen like directly, like Juliet is chosen just because she's chosen. And the wife and George aren't really tied together. And the wife doesn't have as much of the like hunt, like she is. There is still a belief on her part about what the outside world is, but she's not necessarily like have her own hunt that is detailed.
Gotcha.
So a lot of that's fleshed out in the show and brings the characters together, and that's part of the bigger changes. And then there's also stuff. The show is presented as a mystery box for the most part. Certain things are hidden until the end of the show. Certain actions, who committed those actions, is hidden in the show. And certain characters are presented in a more neutral, grayish light. Whereas, as one big difference, so as a spoiler alert, and you just saw there, the shot of somebody in a suit dying out on the surface, that is one of the sheriff folks. His
the
walk
sheriff
out,
or his wife, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're dying because the environment is so toxic and they don't have the technology to exist, essentially, is the illusion that's being made or drawn, the conclusion that you could draw there, right? Like,
correct.
They go out and then eventually they call it the poison in the air seeps into the suit, boom, dead. And you have like enough time to clean the sensor. Generally people are given their free will because once they're outside of the silo, that's like how the show starts with this is another thing I think we should point out is like the amount of like spirituality and doctrine and like proper nouns and stuff that are thrown into this world, and the religion and the beliefs of these people are really, really well realized. So there's this thing called the Pact.
And some of that is new. So like the Pact is existent, but like the Flame Keepers that they mentioned, that's actually, I want to say, completely created for the show.
Interesting.
As is the Syndrome. I don't remember that from the books.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah. So
and the Syndrome is like a physical malady that happens because people have been underground that only affects certain people. In this case, it is one of the replacement
It's a deputy, yeah.
deputy, Billings, and I think he has a different first name, but it's close enough.
Yeah, Billings is correct though. Oh, in the book it's different. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, but like to illustrate one difference in the show, when the sheriff, and again, this is related to the first episode. It's not really, I'd say, a huge spoiler. When he goes out to clean the sensor and he takes off his helmet, in the show, they don't show you his point of view. And they save that reveal to the end of the show.
Yeah, it's great.
Whereas in the book, as soon as he takes off the helmet, you are told what he's seeing.
Interesting. Okay.
And Tim Robbins' character, who is Bernard, the head of IT, like in the show, a lot of his stuff is off camera. Like you don't know what his actions are, and he's presented in a more benign way, a gray way. Like he wants to keep order in the silo, but you don't know much about him beyond that. In the books, the things that he does are known immediately. Like as they happen, you are told this is happening.
Wow.
Because of this.
And I'm thinking about the way that that's putting together. And in one aside, I would say you were convincing me a little bit not to read the books because I think the show is just done so well, and it seems like they've polished different elements of it to string this stuff together so well. But I'm still interested to read them. But even just hearing that, I could see how that could still create so much suspense and so many questions that a reader would want to have answered as well, right?
Yeah, because the book is showing you one thing, but the question is that true? Is what your eyes telling you the actual truth?
Yeah.
And how do you deal with what you're presented? Like, how does your society, how do your people deal with what you can see? And there's sort of, like a faith. Do you believe? Knowing that believing something different is going to get you killed.
Oh, right. Very good point. Yeah. There's not a lot of room for straying in thought or effort, and everybody, in the silo, as opposed to Fallout Vaults, which feel like it could be anywhere between 100 people to 500 people to 1,000 people. In Silo specifically, they recite this number constantly that the silo holds 10,000 people. And it seems like there's a lot of effort to make sure that 10,000 number is like, if new people are born, people are exiting, right? Like if somebody dies, and we have room for 10,000 people. That's kind of it. That's the kind of impression that I got, and that's
yes, yeah. and they make a point of it, very much so in the show, that like when someone is allowed to have kids. Like everybody knows about it. Like it is a very big thing, and they're always balancing the numbers and the structure. And that's really the thrust of the book and the show. The order, and Juliet and others around her pushing up against that order.
Yeah, the kind of stratified layers of society, right? Like if you're and it seems like there isn't a lot of, like if you're on a certain layer, it seems like your family will stay on that layer, right? And unless you're punished, then you're going to be sent down, like lower down, like literally lower down the rung of society.
Yeah, they call it the deep down. So like at the top it's like IT, and they add
judicial, and
I think they mentioned judicial, but they weren't like a huge character. Like a lot of it was just IT. Enforcing all of this stuff, and Bernard directly.
And the mayor too, right, is up there somewhere.
Right, and the mayor is up there as well. But like judicial, they sort of add sort of a bigger security force to the show to sort of ramp up the tension. But yes, as you get further down, you get to mechanical and you get to the deep down, which are the miners and whatnot. And it is progressively worse as you get further, which is part of why Juliet and some of the others around her are the ones in the book and the show to sort of be more willing to push back against the status quo.
Okay. We're kind of running up on time. Is there any other big kind of points or differences you wanted to pull in and talk about?
So I will say that the show episode 10 ends at like 3/4 of the way through the first book.
It's just incredible.
And there's another quarter of the book. I don't think they can stretch that out amongst an entire second season. What I think will happen is, as I said, book 2, Shift, is almost a prequel series. Shift explains how they got from nearly around our time, like a couple of years from now, like a decade plus from now, to the actual modern day of Wool, from the point of view of different characters who are, are we
looking at like a Lost situation? You think we're going to get like one episode do you think we come into season 2 with like not resolving anything from season 1 and we kind of start with the prequel elements? Or do you think we get like one episode? Do you think they're going to jump back and forth?
I think they're going to jump back and forth. I think what they'll do is they will take that last quarter of Wool and they will intersperse the events of it with the flashbacks and the explanations, because Shift actually jumps many years.
Okay.
Like Shift starts in one time period, jumps to another, then jumps forward again, then jumps forward again. So I think what they'll do is they will, Juliet, Rebecca Ferguson's character, will continue to do stuff that happens towards the end of Wool. And then they'll jump back to show like, oh, this is what happened. Like, maybe she'll find a relic that explains, here's what happened here. And then we'll jump back and forth.
All right. So you kind of know what happens, I guess. I think you and I are both being careful, or it's like, it's so good we don't want to spoil it, but there's more interesting conversation to be had. Maybe we do a follow-up to this episode where we like full-on spoiler cast. This is the show. And maybe when season 2 is done or something. Because there's... The show is more... It holds on to the twist, but the book is like, look, the twist isn't the point. The twists aren't the point. There are multiple. And it's more, these are what's happening in the society being controlled in a very specific manner. Do you think that both the show and the books land on that? Like that quote from the script that I read earlier, where Howie's talking about like he was really concentrated on focusing on like people who have control of your lens of the world and how that kind of affects your life. Do you think that's like the kind of core thesis of the Silo books and of the show? Like, do you think they...
Yes. And that's the kind of thing that also, like, to jump back to earlier in the episode, connects somewhat to Fallout. Like, Fallout 1 and Fallout 4 both deal directly with this idea that there are stronger controlling forces from a time before that have shaped the world in a specific way. And Wool, Shift, and Dust deal directly with that on sort of a smaller scale.
Right on. So would you recommend these books, you think? Or do you think...
Oh, yeah. No, they're great books.
They hold up? Okay. Cool.
Yeah, no, these are great books.
All right, I think it's probably a good place to stop, man. I could keep talking for like 2 more
Yeah,
hours.
I would say probably watch the show first, because like I said, the books don't hide anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like the show is presented as sort of a series of murder mysteries entwined with the larger what's happening here. Whereas the books are just like, no, this is the thing that's happening right now.
That's good advice. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because so now I might, if I do venture far enough to start picking up these books and reading them. I'm not somebody who's like super sensitive to the spoilers or anything like that, but I've just had so much fun with the show and the way that they pull on these threads and you invest in these characters. These performances are fantastic. The kind of characterization of each of these people and where they're from and their relative positions in the silo are really interesting. And that's the kind of stuff where I was like, there's no way we're going to get into this in a Fallout show that's got like probably going to have like exploding limbs at some point and like dark humor and jokes and stuff in terms of its well, we'll see, I guess. It's got me both excited and curious. I mean, before I was worried that the Fallout show was going to be kind of another Halo situation. I mean, you talk about the source material, they didn't even get through the first book. And The Last of Us, they did the whole game in like 6 or 8 episodes, right? Like, we're getting a reverence here that's really good.
And I will say, apparently, I have not watched either season. Halo Season 2 is also good now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no. Halo Season 1 went far afield on its own thing, but apparently Halo Season 2 sort of pulls it back and does things better. So if you did watch Halo Season 1, I like I said, I have not, but I have heard from people I trust that Season 2 is much better.
Maybe that's worth investigating for the Context Club.
The adaptations, it's time. And like you said with Last of Us, like Last of Us Season 1 pretty much did the first game, and Season 2 will probably do the second game, and then who knows what will happen then, because they are assumedly they have another game, but they have announced that they are working on a third game.
Last of Us 2 that's probably like 2 or 3 podcast episodes to dive into. I have so many concerns. I have so many concerns about Last of Us 2. It was a harrowing game to get through, and we can't talk about it now, obviously, because we're out of time. But to put this into a TV show, if they don't make some major changes, I think people are going to bounce off pretty hard, pretty quickly.
I mean, we'll see. And if not, they still have Horizon Zero Dawn is over at Netflix, I believe, and I think God of War is at Amazon, much like Fallout was.
Right.
So we'll see how those go as well.
And that's a solid teaser for future Context Club content. Thank you so much for watching or listening today. I'm at Darth Burrito on Twitter. The O is a 0. Mike is at Automatic Zen. In most places, you can find him there, as well as on Blue Sky. MH Williams.
Correctamundo.
MH Williams on Blue Sky. There you have it. We'll be looking to catch up with y'all next week when we do another episode, probably about Fallout, unless some other big comic book, movie, or video game shattering news drops. We're going to be talking more about some atomic media here on Context Club. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.
I am the spin doctor, the master of spin. I will be the man underneath the authoritarian master who is controlling everything, being like, well, you shouldn't actually say that you're going to kill them all, sir. You should be like, hey, you might die if trying to really spin the entire situation so it doesn't look as bad as it truly is.
Man, my feeling is the closer to the top you get in these types of societies, probably the worse off you are. Put me at the bottom. Put me somewhere hidden away where everybody's going to... I mean, there's probably only 500 people, right? But I don't know if that's going to go well for you, man.